But there is also a time to debate those issues internally, not publicly, and there's a time to do it. And running for office for the House on a platform that includes deliberately undercutting the Republican leadership in the House, which simply guarantees that despite the fact you may go to Washington and hobnob with some other member of the leadership, simply means that you have cut off your ability to do those things in support of the Constitution or in support of your constituents that you're running on and that you may like to do. You know, there is a practical side to politics. And there's a practical side of politics even if, as I do, seek to limit and shrink the size, the scope, the cost, and the power of the government. You have to have an ability to get it done up there. The Constitution is not some theoretical instrument. It's not just a book. It is a tool that we use. And part of being able to use that tool as a member of the House of Representatives is to work to the greatest extent that you can, true to your principles and in support of your constituents, to get things done. You don't do that by taking a position that the Democrats want you to take and saying you are going to fight against the Republican leadership.
Thank you. Next question. If and this if elected to Congress, you will be, according to Article 6 of the Constitution, bound by oath or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States. What does this mean to you? What does this sacred oath require?
The oath of office, both as a member of Congress, which I took on 4 occasions, similar to the oath that I took as the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, and similar to the oath of office that I took when I began work for the Central Intelligence Agency, commits me always to place loyalty to nation above all else. And it requires me, not like the President, to the best of his ability. You know, they for some reason, there's some weasel words in there for the President's oath of office. I didn't have that luxury, neither did Barry in the Armed Service. We were required by our oath of office to abide by and support the constitutional laws of the United States of America. Not just to the best of our ability, absolutely. And it requires sometimes going against leadership, which I had to do from time to time. Sometimes it even requires going against the interests as related to you by your constituents. Not often, but occasionally it does. But it requires a degree of backbone that often is lacking up in Washington. I took each one of those oaths of office, those 6 oaths of office, very, very seriously. Put them above all else. And I will continue to do so and allow the honor of going back and once again represent the people of this great nation, this great state, and the 11th District in the Congress of the United States.
I'm going to read this one one more time, just real quick. If elected to Congress, you will be, according to Article 6 of the Constitution, bound by oath or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States. What does this mean to you? What does this sacred oath require?
I'm glad you worded it the way you did, sacred oath. If you go to Webster's 1828 dictionary, read it, so we can properly interpret our founding documents. It says the word sacred means proceeding directly from the mouth of God. I've taken the oath 7 times. The first time was in 1984 when I enlisted in the United States Air Force. And in that oath, you're not only swearing your allegiance and your ability to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States, but you're saying you're willing to lay your life down. I've also taken that oath of office 5 times. Twice when I was in the military, 5 times when I was in the state legislature. One time I decided to go back and look at the history of the oath. And if you go back to the history of the oath, you see the oath is a contract, an enforceable contract. It's like any contract. You go back to the history of the oath of office. George Washington took the oath, but he added something to the end when he took that first oath of office as president, which has been the tradition ever since. He placed his hand upon the Bible, he recited the oath, and he ended with, "So help me God." Now, if you study why he said those words, is because the standard idea at the time was the oath was just like a marriage vow, is that vow was not between husband and wife, but it was husband and wife with God. And George Washington wanted to reaffirm that this oath of office that he was taking was not to the people of the United States that he would uphold and defend the Constitution, but it was to God, and that's who would hold him accountable. That faced me one time recently as I sat across the desk from a member of the governor's staff who was wanting me to vote for a bill that was violated the Constitution of the state of Georgia, and I had to tell him I could not. Quite frankly, I would rather have the governor mad at me than God.
Thank you.
You did say the power does not extend to reducing the temperature in the thermostat.
No, sir. I would be the first one to make that change. I assure you, I understand. And I'm not on the hot seat, so to speak, so sorry about that. If there's any way back there patrolling that and turning off the
It's
cell
locked.
phones, that'd be great.
It has a lock on it.
Got a lock on it. You got a handle on it. There are ways of fixing it. Anyway, next question, and we begin very with you on this question. If you're elected, your first 90 days in office, what will your plan be during the first 90 days in office? And what would you hope you could accomplish in your first 90 days in office?
Well, there's a lot I would like to accomplish, but I also know that no man is an island unto himself. Nobody can promise that when they get to Washington, we can fix all the problems, the massive problems that our nation is facing overnight. No one can do it alone. It takes a coalition of people, of like-minded individuals to get these things done. The first thing that actually, we've already started doing this. My trip to Washington, D.C., I had the opportunity to meet with several of the liberty-minded, conservative, constitutional conservatives that are now serving in Congress that are fighting these fights. We sat around the table, and we've already started building these relationships and already started working on issues. I started it back in September of last year when I traveled to Louisiana to meet with some of these guys, some of the 30 most conservative members of Congress who have been supporting my campaign. And the purpose of that meeting is so we can start working on these ideas, these issues, these principles, of which are so critical to this nation that we have to start working together. I have several ideas. I have several things that we would like to move ahead, but I also know that we are going to have to work together and as one body, as like-minded individuals, to work on these together. The first and most important thing is to build relationships, to build the coalitions of those who can work together in Congress. The other things that we're going to have to start holding the other branches accountable with again. It's going to be building that relationship with others who are already there fighting the fight.
Do you want me to read that question?
No, I'm fine, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, when I return to the Congress next January, my intention is to serve on the same three committees that I had the honor of serving on previously: Judiciary, Financial Services, and Government Reform and Oversight. Now, it's standard protocol in the Congress, not some secret deal as Barry seems to think. It's standard protocol in the Congress, it's been this way for many, many decades, that if a member leaves the House and then returns, such as Ron Paul did, for example, and a number of other members, as long as they go back on the same committees, they're afforded their seniority. No special deal, nothing other than simply standard protocol, Barry. So, when I go back to the House and serve on Financial Services, Judiciary, and Government Reform, I go back with the same years of seniority 8 years on financial services and judiciary, and 6 years on government reform and oversight that I had previously. That places me in a position to really begin to tackle some very serious problems on each one of those committees. For example, on the Judiciary Committee, we need to rein in the NSA and the unconstitutional, unlawful surveillance of law-abiding American citizens. And that venue for doing that, the vehicle for doing that, is the Judiciary Committee. That would be one of my first priorities. On the Financial Services Committee, we need to rein in that rogue agency that I mentioned earlier this evening, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and Dodd-Frank. That is the committee that has the power, the ability, the jurisdiction to do that. And I would use that, exercise that as an 8-year veteran of that committee. And on government reform and oversight, while it's like being a kid in a candy shop, I think that what is going on with our veterans and the Veterans Administration killing through fraud and inaction and inattention must stop. And that is a committee that can help do that.
Gary has requested a rebuttal.
Yeah, just one.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, it's very simple. I just wanted to clarify something that Bob stated, since he mentioned my name, that I claimed there was some secret deal between him and Speaker Baker. I just wanted to clarify that that wasn't me. That was actually a press release by one of your staff members late last year that said you've been discussing that with leadership. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. That was not me that put that out.
So you equate discussing with leadership to be a secret deal, because that's what you said on this Glenn Beck show, Mary.
Would you like to rebut that?
Yes.
I'll give you 1 minute. Go ahead.
Simply calling up the speaker and saying, Mr. Boehner, I want to make sure that the standard protocol still holds and will hold for me when I return to the Congress in this election. And he said, yes. No special deal, Barry. And if you think that every time somebody speaks with leadership, such as you did just the other day, that there's a secret deal, then maybe you want us to, explain to us what secret deal you have up there. I don't think you did, but that's silly, and that's not the way the real world operates out there.
Would you like one last response?
Never ever said here there was a secret deal. It was just something that was released by one of his own staff members. It was a letter signing the press release to the press.
Quoting you, the Glenn Beck show.
All right, I'm going to go to the next question. Now, due to the rebuttals, I'm totally confused. You started first last time, so can you guys help me with this?
I started first last time.
Okay, so this is going to go to you. This is the last question. After this, the candidates will have closing statements, and they'll be allowed 2 minutes for each closing statement, and we will begin with Barry on that, since we began with Bob on the opening statements. And this question is well, I'll let it speak for itself. Specific to your qualifications, both as you view yourself in this role and your opponent. Looking at both resumes, yours and your opponent's, and this is going first to Bob, right?
I answered first last time.
You went first last time.
Yes, sir.
Looking at both resumes, both yours and your opponent's, what would be the argument for you as the better choice over your opponent in the 11th congressional district?
It's not really a matter of who's the most conservative. It's not really a matter of families. We both have wonderful families. I've known Barry's family for many years. They were allies when I was in the Congress before, and they're friends now, as is Barry. The question really is, what separates Bob Barr from Barry Loudermilk? Not in terms of theory, not in terms of rhetoric, but in terms of actually getting things done at a time in our nation's history when we cannot afford to wait. With what is going on domestically in our economy, with what is going on internationally, with a president who, to put it mildly and charitably, has no earthly idea how to deal with forces against us in the Middle East or anywhere else, with what is going on at our border. These are problems that require immediate, focused attention by the Congress. Contrary to what Barry says, the Congress doesn't work on the principle that if you want something done, give it to somebody who's brand new. It works because there is a premium on knowledge, consistency, working for those issues, and having the knowledge where to go to move our conservative agenda forward. It's not going to get moved forward by sending people to Washington to just vote no on everything. It's going to get fixed by having people that can go eye to eye, toe to toe with the Nancy Pelosi's, Steny Hoyers, President Obama. Whether you agree with every vote I've taken, every article I've written, or every stance I've taken, the fact of the matter is that I have fought these people, I have beaten them, and I will do so again. Not as a rookie, but somebody who knows how to beat them.
Thank you. Barry, looking at both resumes, yours and your opponent's, why are you the better choice to be our 11th district congressman?
Well, thank you. That's really a decision that people here can have to make. Looking at our resumes, beyond just sound bites or being the most boisterous speech, it really comes down to who you trust. The differences between Bob and I'll give Bob credit. I appreciate his service in Congress. When he served there, back I sat in his living room discussing issues, especially back when I was the chairman of the Republican Party in Barnstable County. I also applaud his courage to stand up and run as a third-party candidate for the Libertarian Party for president. That took a lot of courage as well. But the difference between Bob and I, that I believe that most people see, and as I see, and as most of the conservative organizations in this nation, the most respected conservative organizations I've seen, is consistency. Consistency on values, consistency on principle, and consistency on ideals. I have been consistent throughout the years, unwavering, steadfast on conservative Republican values. During redistricting as the state senate, I was drawn out of another county. The police chief came up to me, the police chief of one of the cities in the county there, and he said, "Barry, I am so mad at you. Why did I do this time?" She said, "You're no longer going to be my senator." And I said, "Well, Chief, I'm a little bit surprised that you would say that because I know we've been on the opposite side of some issues." She said, "Yes, we're always going to differ. But the one thing I could always count on is I knew where you stood. Even though I didn't always agree, I knew where you stood, and I never doubted it. And that means more to me than anything else. I will be consistent. I have been consistent. And I will represent you with honor and integrity."
Thank you. All right, we are done with questioning. It's 5 after 8 Eastern Time. We are now going to move to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, as I said before, and Barry will begin with you.
Well, thank you, and thank you all for being here. I mean, I know so many of you here, and I've got friends that we fought the fight, and there's friends I have here that are supporting my candidate. I want to say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for getting out there and being engaged. That is the most important thing. You know, growing up here in Georgia, my parents instilled in me a set of values. Those values are put God first in everything, serve others before yourself. Standing for what is right is not always easy, but it is always right. Those are the values that we need to take back to Washington, D.C. Now is the most critical time in our nation. And to turn this nation back around, get it back on course, is going to take courage. It's going to take steadfast, consistent, principled leadership. It's going to take someone who's willing to fight, not just stand up for the Constitution, which is the most important thing, but to stand up for our traditional American values of faith, family, and freedom, because our children's future is at stake. But it also takes somebody who's willing to stand side by side with those who are already there fighting this fight. And there are some really good folks out there who are fighting. And on July 22nd, you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to make a choice of who you who do you trust to go and fight that fight? Some of those folks that are up there fighting the fight today have already made that choice. For instance, Trey Gowdy, who is leading the investigation on Benghazi, boy, God help those who are on the other side of that with Trey. Trey has said, I stand with Barry. Mark Meadows, who yesterday took the EPA to task for losing their emails as well, said, I stand with Barry. Jim Jordan, a consistent fighter for the Constitution, has said publicly, I stand with Barry. Mick Mulvaney, Justin Amash, and Jeff Duncan, the other one, South Carolina, said, I stand with Barry. Also, the majority of most of our most respected conservative organizations, Family Research Council, Concerned Women of America, Freedom Works, they have all said, we stand with Barry. And on May 20th, nearly 40% of the voters in this district said, we stand with Barry to represent us in Washington. Thank you for being here. God bless you. StandWithBarry.com. Remember it is July 22nd.
Thank you, Barry. Wow.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you all for being here. And I'd like to thank Barry as well and his family for doing what they're doing, and that is putting themselves forward. It's a family effort, it really is. They know that, my family knows that, and every other candidate, elected official here knows that, and I appreciate it. We have our differences. You've heard some of them here this evening, and there'll be some other programs probably that we'll engage in, and you'll see some differences. The enemy is not here. It's not here. It's not out there. It's not this guy, even though he refused to lower the temperature for us. The enemy is in Washington. And that's where we need to keep our eye and our mind and our heart when we go to the polls on July the 2nd, the 22nd. It is an important election, not just in this race, but in the Senate race, in the school board race, school superintendent race, and all others. But our focus here this evening is what can we, the citizens of the 11th District of Georgia, do on July 22nd to ensure that we do everything possible to stop what this administration and his cohort, Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi in the House, to stop them from destroying America. And you do it, we will do it here in the 11th District by sending me, God's help and your votes, back to the Congress to use the skills that I acquired both before and during my service in the Congress and since, the knowledge that I have of how to move our conservative agenda forward in the face of relentless opposition by the liberals up there. I've done it before. I've been in that arena. I've won battles. I've lost some, but I've won a lot of battles. And you need somebody with that skill, not a rookie, fighting those battles at this crucial time. And I ask for your vote to do so. Thank you.
We end this by saying two things. One is both of you and your families will be in our prayers. Anyone who run for office understands that's no just statement that's thrown out there. It's needed. Secondly, we want to encourage all the voters to remember July 22nd, a special election is coming up. It's called the primary election to run on. Please get out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you.